It is the 7th day of July 2023. Hello and welcome to the News International Edition. We are coming to you live from our Vision Group headquarters here in Kampala, Uganda. I'm Emma Aquero. We start from Congo, where Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi has said that he's planning to sign a security agreement with South Africa as militias continue to occupy swathes of turbulent eastern Congo. In a news conference with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the capital Kinshasa, Tshisekedi explains that the accord could take the form of a mutual defense pact. We have more.
Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi said on Thursday that he was planning to sign a security agreement with South Africa as militias continue to occupy swathes of turbulent eastern Congo. In a news conference with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the capital Kinshasa, Tshisekedi explained that the accord could take the form of a mutual defense pact. These concerns for the security and stability of the Democratic Republic of Congo, so we really dwelled on this point, and he showed a keen desire to support the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we are even considering perhaps having bilateral agreements in addition to what exists at the level of the SADC, South African Development Community, on the subject of mutual support between states if one of them is under attack. The Congolese president highlighted the Mutual Defense Pact of the Southern African Development Community SADC as a potential model without going into details. Africa is a continent of nearly 2 billion people, a market of nearly 2 billion people, and if we solve the problem of continental integration, I believe we will become one economic and commercial power that will rival the other economic and commercial powers of the world. Both the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Africa are members of the 16-nation SADC. Ramaphosa, for his part, pledged to keep helping the DRC to fight insecurity and poverty.
As President Tshisekedi says, on the issue of security, South Africa has been heavily invested and heavily present in the DRC on the eastern side, and we are also going to strengthen that relationship by having a bilateral agreement on security and defense, and the idea that we should have a minerals commission which will assist all of us, particularly in SADC, to manage our minerals correctly so that they are not plundered by those from outside our region and continent, so that we establish policies so that we are able to attract investments.
Armed groups have plagued much of eastern DRC for 3 decades, a legacy of regional wars that flared in the 1990s and early 2000s. But the M23 rebel group has seized swathes of territory and displaced about 1 million people in the region since re-emerging from dormancy in late 2021. The DRC has repeatedly accused its smaller neighbor Rwanda of backing the Tutsi-led M23, a charge Kigali denies. But the United States and several other Western countries, as well as independent UN experts, agree with the DRC's assessments. On Thursday, Tshisekedi said he did not oppose to dialogue to end the conflict, but that he refused to talk to puppets in the M23.
Now in Kenya, police were out in force on Friday as Kenyans took to the streets in answer to an opposition call to demonstrate over a raft of controversial tax hikes. Tear gas was fired to break out protests in the Indian Ocean port city of Mombasa. Television images showed as people chanted, "The struggle is not over." Veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga's Azimio Alliance called for anti-government protests over the impact of new taxes on Kenyans already suffering from a severe cost of living crisis. President William Ruto is imposing taxes on us without our consent and making laws whose net effect is to make life increasingly difficult, Azimio said in a statement issued earlier this week. Ruto had last week signed into law a finance bill that is expected to generate more than $2.1 billion for the government's depleted coffers and help repair the heavily indebted economy. The Finance Act provides for new taxes or increases on a range of basic goods such as fuel and food and mobile money transfers, as well as a controversial levy on all tax-paying Kenyans to fund a housing scheme. But the High Court in Nairobi last Friday suspended implementation of the legislation after a senator filed a case challenging its constitutional legality. Despite the ruling, Kenya's energy regulator later that day announced a hike in palm prices to take account of the doubling of VAT to 16% as stipulated in the law. In Nairobi's central business district, where main government buildings are located, police were patrolling on foot, in vehicles and on horseback, while several roads in the capital were closed. In the lakeside city of Kisumu, an Odinga stronghold, a man in a vehicle mounted with a loudspeaker was mobilizing residents to turn out. We must listen to Baba, as Odinga is known. He said, "We have to demonstrate today. Come out and join us to liberate our country," he said. The protests have been dubbed Saba Saba 7-7 as they are taking place on the 7th day of the 7th month. From Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that it is difficult for his forces to fight Russia without a long-range weapons, as the decision to supply them to Ukraine depends only on Washington. Speaking during a visit to the Czech capital, Zelensky explained that a lack of long-range weapons means you cannot reach the right distance to destroy your enemy.
President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to hold talks with Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Friday on the latest leg of a tour to push Ukraine's bid to join NATO and secure more weapons from allies. The talks in Istanbul come on the eve of the 500th day since Russia's invasion, with Zelensky admitting Ukraine's counteroffensive was progressing slowly. He called on the United States and other allies to provide long-range weapons and artillery during a two-day visit to Prague, ending on Friday. Without long-range weapons, it's difficult not only to fulfill an offensive mission, it's difficult to conduct a defensive operation, to be honest. It's very difficult. This means that you're defending your land and you can't reach the right distance to destroy your enemy. Long-range weapons aren't new. We talk about it. We talk about appropriate weapons with our partners. First of all, we are talking about long-range systems with the United States because it depends only on them today. The president also said that Ukraine's counteroffensive was not fast, but Kyiv's troops were advancing. As for the counterattack, we are attacking. We now have the initiative. The offensive is not fast, that's a fact. But nevertheless, we are advancing, not retreating like the Russians. And that's why I see a positive in this. Volodymyr Zelensky says that Kyiv wants honesty in ties with NATO as he speaks ahead of a key summit of the Western military bloc. We just need an invitation. We understand there may be difficulties in obtaining the united support of all alliance partners. Some are still looking back at Moscow. Some are afraid of Russia. Although I believe that this is a great chance to show the courage and strength of this alliance. We are talking about a clear signal, some specific things in the direction of the invitation. We need that motivation. We need honesty in our ties. The talks with Erdogan, an important broker in the conflict, are to focus on an expiring deal to ship Ukrainian grain across the Black Sea, as well as next week's NATO summit. Analysts also expect Zelensky to push Erdogan to give a green light for Sweden's NATO membership ahead of Tuesday's meeting of the military alliance in Lithuanian capital Vilnius. Zelensky is seeking NATO accession for his own country, which has been battling Russia's invasion since February 2022, and has said he wants the summit to lead to an invitation to join the bloc. Both Zelensky and Erdogan want to extend a United Nations and Turkey brokered deal with Russia, under which Ukraine has been allowed to ship grain to global markets during the war.
Still in Ukraine, Ukrainian war veterans wounded in the war with Russia held an open training session in preparation for the upcoming Invictus Games, an international sporting competition for disabled soldiers. The games will be held in Düsseldorf in September 2023. Take a look.
I was wounded on March 24, 2022, near Severodonetsk in the Lugansk region. I hit an anti-personnel mine. I helped myself and called for an evacuation. They helped me and took me away. After that, I started treatment. My goal was to come and see how the guys train here, but as you can see, I started to try myself and I'm not bad at it. We need to attract more guys, more veterans to do this. It distracts and helps in rehabilitation. Sport is life. Now we predict that we will have about 4 million veterans and people involved in them. We will need to develop a policy for veterans, especially in the regions, because people are returning home to their locality and we must give them the tools to develop and integrate into society.
Now in Ethiopia, people are turning plastic waste into opportunities. We'll look at this and more stories after this short break. Please stay with us.
Urban life. Fun.
It's a nice wash. You wear the same. Remember that day you have to look beautiful.
I wanna tell you my mind, oh. I don't understand, oh. 'Cause I didn't see you.
Our family has already become a subject of controversy.
Take her, bring her to the holding area, and call the mental hospital together.
That's Daphne.
That woman again.
Come back to your 20 celebrity edition.